The Ex Diris is an auto-loading grenade launcher that spawns lucent moths that auto-seek enemies and can also amplify you. And that's all you really need to know. Go use this right now. Thanks. See ya! But wait, how can Titans turn this into the craziest explosion machine to constantly be amplified and destroy everything? That's what we're going to go over today. In this build, I like to call Punchy Punchy Explosion Moths, because that's all you have to do for this build to be utterly disgusting. This build will capitalize off a point contact cannon brace, Ex Diris, and of course the ability to be constantly amplified, improving your damage. Let's talk about Ex Diris first. This grenade launcher has two insanely fun perks and a catalyst that helps it fit into this build amazingly. And the perks are Corrupted Nucleosynthesis, which allows this weapon to enrage while dealing or taking sustained damage, and while in range you get an increased rate of fire. And then you have the perk Loyal Moths, which make final blows of this weapon create a loyal moth. Then this moth will go out, seek out targets, detonate, which will damage them and blind them. Both these perks are great, but so is the catalyst, which is called Berserk Rush. And this makes the weapon enrage faster while amplified, and final blows with this weapon will make you amplified. This weapon just screams, please use me in an Arc Titan build. And we're answering its prayers, so let's take a look at the exotic armor piece we're going to be using. Here we're going to be using PCCB because of its insanely good ability to turn your Thunderclap melee into a 360 degree AoE lightning strike that jolts every single target around you and does massive damage while amplified. Then it'll also grant you melee energy back for every single kill with the melee. There really isn't much more to go over here. Just remember the keywords jolt and amplified, because just like how the grenade launcher can blind, we're going to use these three main arc verbs to make the absolute most out of this build. Now we're going to cover everything you need for the subclass. For melee, we're going to be using Thunderclap, and for grenade, we're going to be using the Pulse Grenade. The Pulse Grenade is going to get way more powerful down the line with our fragments and aspects, so let's just go ahead and take a look at those. For aspects, we're going to be going with Knockout, which makes it so critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with arc energy, which increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Damaging targets with melee attacks starts health regeneration and makes you amplified. And then we have Touch of Thunder, which in this case will allow your Pulse Grenade to create ionic traces when damaging a target. So now, just because of these two aspects, our grenade now gives us energy back, and our melee has increased damage, it can amplify us, and will start health regeneration. That alone is already good enough to call this build good to go, but thankfully we can further power ourselves with fragments to increase our abilities that much more. Our four fragments are Spark of Beacon, so while you're amplified, your arc special weapons create a blinding explosion. Spark of Ions, defeating a jolted target creates ionic trace. Spark of Discharge, arc weapons final blows have a chance to create ionic trace. And Spark of Resistance, while surrounded by combatants, you're more resistant to incoming damage. Motherfucking kablam, icing on the cake, I don't know what to say, they're just good. I know I just read these to you, but check this out. We now have two blinding explosions because of Spark of Beacon and the Moth, another 2 ways to generate more ionic traces for more ability energy, and an extra 40% damage resistance. But since it's multiplicative, your total resistance will be like 55-ish% instead of just 30 with 100 resilience. And that's extremely important when your build has a lot of melee focus. Oh, and also, it'll help protect you against your own fucking grenades from this launcher, because they hit hard, man. I've killed myself 20 times with this, so please do what you can and not barrel stuff your enemy. Just play at a slight range and you'll be totally okay. And lastly but not least, we have armor mods. Always have trouble talking about armor mods without it being an absolute snooze fest, so let's try this approach. How's this? This is pretty, right? I don't need to give you a direct breakdown of all this because I'm sure you know what all of these do, and the dim link is in the description. But to put it simply, Ex Diris and your melee kills will grant you orbs of power. These orbs of power will turn into armor charges, which will heal you and give you melee energy. Then those armor charges will pair with your melee kickstart mod to grant you even more melee energy. Oh, then these mods right here, these are the ones that are going to help you find more special ammo. And boom! And boom. That is all you need. The entire gameplay loop focuses on using your melee as much as possible, then chucking explosive moths and grenade anywhere in between. And those three main verbs we talked about earlier are still the staples to our build. Jolt. This will be happening from our point cannon melees, and will wipe out groups of enemies in seconds, while also giving us a ton of ability energy, and can also stun overload champions. Then we have Blind. This will be from our grenade launcher, and it's one of my favorite elemental abilities because it stops your enemy from attacking you, and it can also stun unstoppable champions. And lastly, we have Amplified for even more damage on our melees, more blinding explosions, and even more speed. Oh, then I guess you could say ionic traces are pretty important too, because they give us some of the armor charges thanks to elemental charge mod, and they give us more ability energy all across the board, so they're pretty cool too. So yeah, I'm sure you've been watching the background footage, so do yourself a favor, use this build if you like having fun. Okay, that's all I got for you today. See ya!